Hello, Santa Cruz, and welcome to the Nextie on Nextie interview series. My name is Cliff Hodges. I am the owner and founder of Adventure Out and a Nextie recipient from 2011. And I'm happy to be joined today by Greg Pepping, Executive Director of the Coastal Watershed Council and recipient of a 2014 Nextie. Thanks for coming, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so for those of you that are new to the Nexties, they are an award once a year given out to honor people who are doing innovative and inspiring things in Santa Cruz. This year's award ceremony honors 6 people. It's going to be on May 30th at the Rio Theater, and definitely check out santacruznext.org for tickets and more information. Going to hop in right here with one of this year's recipients, Greg Pepping. And Greg, actually, to give it a quick intro here, why don't you just tell me real quickly about yourself and your organization and what you're up to?
I'm the Executive Director of the Coastal Watershed Council, and the Coastal Watershed Council is an environmental nonprofit. We've been around since 1995, and we have a new signature project. It's called the San Lorenzo River Alliance. Really, it's about reconnecting the community to that river that's 25 miles long, starts up in the mountains, goes right down by downtown Santa Cruz, and a lot of people enjoy it, but we don't have the success story that a lot of other communities have, and that's what the Alliance is about. The community's really excited about it. We're getting a lot of good press. So I think that's why I got this Nextie award, is because the community, I see the award as an endorsement of that project.
Awesome, very cool. I'm really excited about it. As someone who grew up in Santa Cruz and seeing sort of what has happened to that river over the years, often ignored, often sort of left to itself, it's inspiring. It's exciting to see people wanting to work on revitalizing it and making it a center of town. Before we go too far down the path of CWC, your organization, and the river, I think the people out there would love to get to know you a little more. There's been a lot of talk of the Nextie Awards and the organizations behind these people, but I don't think people know you guys that well yet. So I'd like Santa Cruz to get to know Greg Pepping, and I want to kick it off with probably, I think, the question that is most important and is on everybody's mind, which is if I were to take all of this year's Nextie recipients and put them in a cage and lock the cage and have you all fight to the death, who comes out?
Probably Tyler.
Tyler? Why is that?
I should say me, but
I mean,
surfers are pretty strong.
Yeah.
And I bet I don't surf as much as he does. I just watched the second Hunger Games on a flight back to Santa Cruz, and your question makes me think of that.
You don't think there's like a dark horse? Like,
well, that's the thing.
Kendra's going to come out with like knives.
That's the thing. It's all about strategy and alliances. And
yeah, it's not just a simple like physical brute force kind of.
In a cage. Yeah, it depends on how big the cage was.
Okay.
I'd probably put my money on Tyler.
There's no water in the cage, so I don't know about
that would be my advantage.
Okay. Well,
get people in a headlock and pull them underwater and fight that way. Is maybe how I would do it. No water. I got a long shot for me though.
Okay. My money's gonna be on Kendra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that question.
Knife wielding. No. Well, this is gonna be a new series of interviews, so people got to expect the unexpected. Excellent. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Santa Cruz, you're welcome.
And that is not really going to happen, though, right? This is a hypothetical cage?
Totally.
Okay.
So you're from Iowa. Could probably move on.
Look, somebody's got to be from Iowa. And I'm proud to be from Iowa. I love visiting there. And I've lived on the East Coast, the Midwest, out of the country. I've been in Santa Cruz for 6 years, and I am so in love with Santa Cruz. I'm almost like a cheesy walking tourism commercial for Santa Cruz. I love it here. It's a good fit.
Awesome.
It's a good place to be for me.
Well, so from Iowa, how did you get to Santa Cruz? What brought you to Santa Cruz?
I was dating somebody that, when I was in grad school, she was a postdoc and got a job here at UCSC. She's faculty here. And we didn't stay together, but I fell in love with Santa Cruz. And originally I was going to go overseas and do global health stuff focused on water. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Uganda doing water and sanitation projects. So I went back to grad school to get a degree that would just help me get a better job doing that type of stuff. And then came here and realized that we have important water issues. And California economy is huge relative to the country, you know, and the whole world, and we've got serious water quality issues. So it feels good for me to be working, you know, investing in my own community, working on stuff that matters. To me, water really matters, and it matters to people here too. So I feel really fortunate to be able to be working in something that matters to me, and that is helpful, productive. You know, it's important to the community.
So, you know, I think we obviously know we have serious water issues, but you said you were a Peace Corps volunteer in Uganda, and my sort of stereotypical assumption would be that you saw water issues there that at least visibly were far more glaring, far more obvious in the way that affected the people there. How does your Peace Corps volunteer experience in your time in Uganda sort of affect the way that you look at water issues here in the United States? Do they look sort of negligible in comparison? Are they just as important? What effect does the Peace Corps have on you now today as your work in Santa Cruz?
Water issues here are just as important but different.
Okay.
We don't have a little boy in the next village over dying from dehydration. So, and I saw that. You know, I worked for 2 years in a rural village where people didn't have very good water quality to drink, so they'd get sick, and they didn't have health care, so they might die. That was real. That was very real. But we have serious water quality issues here too, and water supply issues. So the Peace Corps experience really just offers me perspective.
Okay.
Our challenges here are serious, but I can put them into context relative to what's going on elsewhere. And I think that's helpful. It doesn't make me take things any less seriously here. I mean, we're in the middle of a drought, and that could get worse. But it's helpful to know, in the grand scheme of things, where we fit, you know?
Yeah, fascinating. So let's go back to Iowa for a minute here. You grew up in Iowa, which is not far. You were only, what, a few hours from Chicago.
Right.
But what was it like coming out here as a Cubs fan?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm still a Cubs fan.
Okay, I'm sorry.
There are no fair weather Cubs fans because the weather is not that fair, really,
No.
ever. Actually, when I moved here, the Cubs were having a playoff run, and I went to their last playoff game in L.A.
So it was like 45 years ago?
In 2008,
Oh,
they lost to the Dodgers. They were swept by the Dodgers. And I'm still a Cubs fan. I think I would get some points with some people for being devout, loyal Cubs fan. The Giants are my second favorite team. I'll probably lose some points for that, for having them second.
Yeah.
But I like the underdog, you know. Obviously, if I root for the Giants. I root for the A's, too. They're probably my favorite American League team.
Well, that makes more sense.
Because I'm used to rooting for
Rooting for losing teams, yeah.
the A's are good, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start getting into the work you do. Let's talk about the River Alliance and the Coastal Watershed Council. So for those people that were aware of the Coastal Watershed Council before the River Alliance, I don't know if all 5 of them are watching, but for those of people that were aware of the Coastal Watershed Council, I think the San Lorenzo River Alliance is a bit of a departure from the historical activities of your organization. I'd love for you to speak on that. How is the San Lorenzo River Alliance new for the Coastal Watershed Council, and why did you take a bit of a departure with that?
As I mentioned, the Coastal Watershed Council has been around since '95, and we've always had these 3-year strategic plans. So I've been executive director for 5 years. And a couple years ago, we were due for a new strategic plan. We really wanted to make sure we were asking some challenging questions. Are we serving the community as much as possible? Are we making as much of an impact as we can? And we realized that we're working in 3 different counties, all the watersheds that drain to Monterey Bay, too thinly spread out. We wanted to focus on one key watershed, one river, and we focused on the San Lorenzo River. It's the largest watershed in this county. It goes right through downtown, our county seat. A lot of communities in the valley are built around the river, and 64% of all city water customers drink that river. It's an important river to the community in a lot of ways, and it is a departure from the stuff we used to do. We're a really science-based organization. We're kind of a geeky, and I mean that in a good way. We find out what's in the water and talk to local leaders, talk to kids, talk to landowners about that. The San Lorenzo River Alliance is much broader than that. Instead of just water quality focused, that's one piece. It's a big piece. We're trying to get bacteria out of the San Lorenzo River. But it's also about recreation. There's a city ordinance that says you can't paddle the lower river, and we're working with the city to explore changing that. Public safety is what a lot of local leaders talk about, and crime statistics show that there is crime along the river. And it's also just a lost opportunity. So many communities have this cool place. It's hip, it's fun, it's a draw, people are proud of it. And relative to those communities, Santa Cruz has a long ways to go. So we're trying to get people down to the river, get people to realize it's there. We're kind of visually and physically cut off from the river by the levees,
Right.
and they're there for a reason. But the story about the river is broader than science now. It's about public safety. It's about economic vitality and the quality of life that tech people and the type of residents that we'd really like to attract want. It's about water quality and recreation and flood protection and water supply, all those things, just through the river. So when I listen to local leaders talk about what their top priorities are and what they think the community wants, I'm trying to convince people that if you focus on the river, you're meeting most of those goals. It's not a competing conversation.
Yeah.
It's not taking your eye off the ball. So to us, it's like the river gets you a lot of the goals that the community says they want.
Yeah. So let's go back to something you said a minute ago. 64% of residents draw their drinking water from the river. As someone who grew up here, that concept makes me want to vomit. And the only reason I say that is I was born in the late 70s. I grew up in Santa Cruz, and the view for a long time was that river was disgusting. We used to see the tourists play in the river mouth down at the beach, right? They'd go to the boardwalk, they'd go out on the main beach, and they'd be playing the river mouth, and everyone would stand there, all the locals would stand there, jaw dropped, going, those people are swimming in the most disgusting water ever. So there is that perception out there, I think, of a lot of people who have lived here for a long time. What would you say about quality in general? How should people feel about drinking that river? What's your opinion of the water quality in general of the San Lorenzo?
Well, you're talking about a few things there. Number one is perception. And this isn't a scientific evaluation, but as I hear people talking about the river, just like you just did, and I know the data, that water is not as dirty as people think.
Mm-hmm.
Dry weather, the river is pretty clean. During the rainy season, it's hit and miss. It's a dynamic system. As you go upstream, it gets cleaner and cleaner in general. That's with regard to swimming in the river. The drinking water is fine because we treat it.
Right.
Yeah. And Loch Lomond, is Newell Creek. That's a tributary of the San Lorenzo River. So when I say 64%, there's 92,000 city water customers drinking 64% city water. That's the river itself, and then Loch Lomond. And the other thing you mentioned was you see kids playing in the river. One of the real motivators for people is that I hear people say, I used to play in the river and now I won't take my kids down there.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. People aren't all right with that story. We shouldn't be getting worse off. The next generation should have the same opportunities we should have, we did have, and then some, as opposed to the other way around. We're not okay with things getting worse, and we want to reverse that.
Very cool. So let's say I'm not an environmentalist. Let's say I'm a total jerk, money-grubbing bastard.
Hypothetically?
This should not be a difficult visualization for you. Let's say I don't care about the environment at all. I don't care if that water is drinkable. I don't care if you can swim in it. Who cares? If I am economically motivated, if I am a business person that wants to make money downtown, why should I care about the River Alliance?
It's a good question.
Because they're out there. They're not going to talk too loud in a town like Santa Cruz, but those people are out there.
I understand that. Everybody has their own priorities. If you just cared about money, think about the river and the River Walk. It's a city park. The land around the levee down in Santa Cruz is called the River Walk. If you just cared about money, you could turn that place into a police state. You could have lights, and you could make it look like a prison yard or something, and you could drive all illegal activity out of there.
Yeah.
That might work. It would cost a bunch of money, and it probably wouldn't feel very good in a lot of other ways. And the feel good is part of the draw. Santa Cruz is a tourist destination. So you could take that approach, or if you cared about money, you'd realize that you need some enforcement, but you need a lot of other creative approaches. And we're trying to get people down there for art and history and music and movies and exercise. We're doing the boot camp this summer with Adventure Out. We're doing the boot camp this summer with CrossFit. And there's research to show, but it's also just logical. It's intuitive that if you get more people down there doing cool, legal, wholesome things, there will be fewer people doing illegal things. So if you just cared about money, I think most people will realize you need a creative approach. It's enforcement, but it's also activation of the space. The San Lorenzo River Alliance has a specific working group, a community engagement working group, to get people down there. Lots of other nonprofits are doing things, and we're the mechanism to get them all together so that
Got it. You're the
everybody,
glue.
yeah, everybody knows what the others are doing, and we don't overlap in things.
So we want to get people on the river levee. And I think what is going on right now, what you're doing is you're having events to get people on the river levee. But I know there's also been discussion of very long-term plans of getting people on the river levee. So I myself have dreamed of restaurants, a second-story restaurant on Front Street with a deck that goes all the way up to the river levee, and you can walk down the river levee and hop on a deck and have a drink, or go further down and maybe there's an art gallery that butts up to the river levee. So although those are both similar ideas, getting people up on the river levee, I believe, I'm of the opinion that to make it a long-term permanent solution and destination, that we need permanent things there, like restaurants and galleries and other attractions. So I think what's going on now is great with the events, but boot camps and pop-up restaurants that are very temporary, I think are only going to do so much. So what's it going to take to get permanent fixtures on the river levee?
You're right. It's a combination of approaches. Some stuff we can do right now. We can have an events. We can have the paddle events, and all types of different things to get people down there. That's short term, and it's visible, and it's right now, and that excites people. And then some of the stuff is midterm. There's some small scale infrastructure things you can invest in. And then longer term is probably the River Cafe. People are really excited about that. The idea comes from people not hearing from someone else, and they say they like it. People have that idea on their own. Lots of people bring that up. And it's an anchor. It's like after the '89 earthquake, I understand that getting one of the main theaters downtown was key, because then there was a place for people to go, and that was a kernel of activity. And if you had a river cafe, then there's more of a destination. That will take a while, but that's not a 5 or 10 year thing. That could happen in a few years. If you look at Front Street properties, the back is faced,
They're cement walls.
Yeah, and that's not that pretty. So it would probably take some partnership between the city and private landowners and developers.
Now, do those landowners, if I own a building on Front Street, can I build up to the river levee right now as it stands? Is that legally acceptable?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
The levee is a partnership between the Army Corps of Engineers and the city. So you have an operation and maintenance agreement between the feds and the city. And then you have the private landowners right next to that. So it's going to be a combination of getting all those different parties together. What we hope is that we can work on the short-term stuff for visibility, get people excited, change the conversation really, make it about possibilities, this being a possibility, making it more positive instead of just negativity and frustration. And we're an environmental nonprofit, so we don't develop properties, but we want to feed that conversation and get people excited about it.
So speaking of feeding the conversation, and as a Nexties recipient, you are one who inspires. What is your pipe dream, or maybe not a pipe dream, but in current situation, pipe dream for the anchor? You could have any anchor. Money is not an issue. Red tape is not an issue. What and where is your ideal anchor on the San Lorenzo River levee in downtown Santa Cruz?
The ideal anchor, I think, is a really cool eatery between Santa Cruz Community Credit Union and Wells Fargo on that stretch of Front Street. And it's designed in a way that if you're walking down Pacific, you get to Cathcart, and
for Cathcart, for those who don't know the street names, what's on Cathcart?
The side street there, one of the side streets coming off Pacific, and that if you're walking down Pacific, which a lot of people do, visually you'd be drawn to look over and see the river, and it's only a block away. And so you'd have an eatery that was inviting, and you'd funnel activity from Pacific up to the Riverwalk, up to this eatery, a bar, restaurant, cafe type thing. And the reason this is important is because then it's another key dot. You have the Warrior Stadium, you have the boardwalk, you have the tannery, and it's just another dot
Start
on this
connecting
ribbon.
those dots. Yeah.
And you have the Sanctuary Exploration Center, you have the wharf. All of those can be connected. And we could ignore the river and just focus on the rest of the stuff, but it's really a lost opportunity. I mean, I'm not a real estate person, but it seems to me that you're sort of, the Holy Grail could be making new land here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you build up and then reach over to the levee path, you could be on that path and then with one step be on somebody's patio. And that would change it completely. That is truly changing the look and feel of the place. And I often give stories of other communities who have success stories, San Antonio, Redding, Sacramento, Austin, a lot of places. And San Antonio, for example, is really commercial. We probably don't want that here, but we get to decide what our story is. If you had mixed use above that, and you had some apartments or condominiums above that, and you have residential or commercial or retail on the first couple floors, and then housing above that, that also helps with what the community wants to build as far as like not having more congestion. You have more people living downtown, that more concentrated development. So all that fits with those plans.
Very cool. So you guys out there, you land people, building owners, realtors, restaurateurs, people with money, you're hearing it here from Greg Pepping, Nexty winner 2014. That is the Holy Grail. That's the next open prime spot for development in Santa Cruz, is going to be that river levee. So before we wrap up here, the last question I'd like to ask you is, what does winning a Nexty mean to you, and how has it changed, or do you see it changing the work you're doing?
It means that the community digs this project. I believe in this. For me, it's fulfilling what I feel is the next step for me. I mentioned we're a really science-based organization, and we're expanding now. Our work is now about public safety and economic vitality and engagement of the community, as well as science, recreation. And we're so connected to gadgets, you know, and a lot of us are restored through nature. We have a natural space right in our urban setting in downtown Santa Cruz. And the community, I think, will be healthier and happier if that river changes. I'm really humble about what one nonprofit can do, but we have an alliance, and together, I'm not humble at all about what change we can make along the river. And if that river changes, it will totally transform Santa Cruz. The Nexty, to me, is validation that the community likes this project. The Nexty is visibility for the San Lorenzo River Alliance. I'm really proud to have received it. I'm working hard and accept it genuinely, and I'm really touched by it. I'm psyched to be in a club of change makers like all of you. And I really want to leverage it for the river, for the community. I think that's what this opportunity is about.
Well, that's really awesome, Greg, and I really appreciate you being here. And just so you know, I, for one, am a huge supporter. As someone who owns businesses in Santa Cruz, grew up in Santa Cruz, I would love nothing more than to see that river levee revitalized and be a center of downtown. So thank you for all you do. Thanks for coming, and I look forward to being there on May 30th to see you get that Nexty award.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thank you, Santa Cruz. Make sure to check out santacruznext.org for tickets and more information on the 2014 Nexties.